Call the Wednesday, September 18th, 2019 Planning Commission hearing to order. Heather, if you call a roll.
Mr. Granger?
Here.
Mr. Boswell?
Here.
Mr. Klee?
Here.
Ms. Macbeth?
Here.
Mr. Edwards?
Here.
Mr. Schaller? Mr. Rogers?
Here.
Our first order of business is the approval of minutes from our regular meeting and our comp plan work session of last month. Are there any modifications, corrections to the minutes? I read through them. They looked
I mentioned something to Heather, but she's
okay.
got it.
Okay, cool. Anything else? Then
I move that we approve the minutes as written.
Second.
Mr. Granger?
Aye.
Mr. Boswell?
Aye.
Mr. Klee?
I abstain.
Ms. Macbeth?
aye.
Mr. Edwards?
Aye.
Mr. Rogers?
I abstain.
There are no consent agenda items, so we'll move right to public hearings. And our first order of business is a co-joined public hearing, PCR 19-016 and 017, a request by Colonial Williamsburg Foundation for a definition to the zoning ordinance and then a special use permit associated with Berret's restaurant.
And before we begin, as an employee of the Colonial Williamsburg Foundation, I will recuse myself from discussion and voting on this.
Madam Chair and members of Planning Commission, Colonial Williamsburg, on behalf of Berret Seafood Restaurant and Tap House Grill, is requesting a text change and special use permit for an outdoor event space for live music at 199 South Boundary Street. The request is for live music, both acoustic and amplified, on Sundays from 12 to 3 and nightly from 6 to 9 p.m. from May through October. They propose using an 8-foot by 8-foot stage, as you can see on the screen, elevated about 18 inches off the ground with an electrical source at the stage. All equipment will be kept on the stage and not placed on the ground and surrounding areas. The 2013 comp plan designates this parcel as downtown commercial, which is a land use category intended to promote a variety of business uses in the downtown planning area. Adjacent properties to the north, south, and east are designated downtown commercial also, with the properties to the west being designated William and Mary. I included the statement of intent for the B1 Downtown Business District and special use permit requirements in your packet. The Architectural Review Board conceptually reviewed and approved the stage conditioned upon horizontal siding being installed to hide the undercarriage of the stage as the entire structure being painted Ocean Storm, which is the color to match the Tap House Grill color at their August 26th meeting. And you can see that Ocean Storm color in the photo up at the upper left corner. The Site Plan Review Committee reviewed the request at their August meeting and recommended a time limit be in place for all music to end due to the proximity of the performances to the dormitories across the street. How the request originated was the applicant submitted a minor site plan for a patio that included a stage. Since this type of use is not listed in the zoning ordinance, the use is not permitted. Therefore, staff notified the applicant a text change would be needed, which resulted in the two applications before you today. Staff proposes the following definition for an outdoor event space. An outdoor event space is an outdoor space located on the property of and used by the owners or operators of a restaurant in conjunction with such restaurant use not to exceed 1,500 square feet, which contains a stage or designated performance area and seating in which live music and entertainment is performed. For this application, Berret proposes to construct a new patio containing 936 square feet adjacent to the 8 by 8 foot stage. Approximately 300 square feet of outdoor dining exists outside of Tap House Grill, which equals to about 1,300 square feet of total outdoor space. They propose to hold live music acts of 1 or 2 members on the stage as shown on the overhead, with all equipment to be located on the stage. Based on the applicant's proposed 9 p.m. ending for the musical entertainment, staff recommends a 9:30 p.m. deadline for all music to end, which allows for some spillover of music based on the performer. The use of the space for small venues for the restaurant is appropriate and will add to the vibrancy downtown and is in harmony with the comprehensive plan. Therefore, staff recommends that Planning Commission recommend to City Council approval of the text change to define an outdoor event space as outlined in the proposed ordinance. For PCR 19-17, staff also recommends that Planning Commission recommend to City Council approval of the special use permit for an outdoor event space at Tap House Grill to contain a stage 8x8 and U patio as shown on the enclosed conceptual site plan, conditioned upon all music performances must cease by 9:30. The Architectural Review Board approving the final design to include any lighting or cover for the stage, musical acts that contain no more than 2 individuals, all equipment being on the stage, and the approval is granted for the applicant only and is not transferable. I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have. Keith Johnson with the foundation and Mr. Mahoney with Berret's are here if you have any questions of them.
Any questions of Carolyn at this point?
I have a quick one. So I see it's from May to October. Any reason March and April are off the table? Is it a weather concern?
I think that Mr. Mahoney can probably answer that. That was what he put in his application, was that time frame.
Okay. I just wouldn't want to limit them in case it was a nice night in April that somebody wanted to play for. My only question.
Okay, so I will open up the public hearing, and if the applicant would like to come forward first, if they wish. And anyone who comes forward, please state your name and address.
Hi, Brian Mahoney, Berret Seafood Restaurant. To answer your question, if I may, we'd love to open it up to March and April. We generally don't schedule in March and April because of the weather, but there's always some beautiful nights that we'd like the opportunity to do so if possible.
Yeah, I guess just following on that, I mean, my understanding of the Tap House over the years is that you have mirrored the, like, Easter through homecoming at the college schedule for the most part, as long as the weather's cooperating. And so that does bleed sometimes into not March, but April and maybe the earliest of November.
Sometimes even March, and it's really cold out there,
Yeah.
but sometimes
Yeah.
even March.
Yeah.
But yes, and then certainly through October. But sometimes we get some nice weather in November as well, so.
I would note also that in my staff comments, I did not put a month time limit on it. I only put a time limit to the ending.
Okay, so the flexibility of the actual PCR recommendation is about the ending time, and for me, that was one of the pivot points that, well, there's either a question for you, Carolyn, or for applicant, that it seems like that when the Tap House Grill is a functioning entity, which it's not in the middle of the winter, that this could be an option anytime they're open and they could have somebody. Okay, that's, any other, I guess, comments that you had? Questions? Yeah.
Questions? Thank you very much
Okay,
for your
thank you.
time.
Thank you.
Okay, the floor is open if anyone would like to come forward and speak on this matter. Okay, seeing no one, I'll close the public hearing. Does anyone have any comments, questions? I mean, this seems to me to be something that has been happening on an ad hoc basis, the music. As somebody who lives right downtown and walks by there quite a lot, it's not disruptive to the neighborhood, it's pleasant. And this formalizes that, plus provides additional outdoor seating to expand an ABC-controlled space for the Tap House Grill, so it seems like it's a win-win in all directions for me.
As staff said, it increases the vibrancy downtown, which
Right.
is something we want to do.
So if someone would make a motion, I think we can probably address both of these together, but there are conditions associated with 19017.
I move that we recommend approval of PCR 19-016 and PCR 19-017 with the stated conditions.
Second.
Heather?
Mr. Granger?
I think I'd like to abstain, please.
Mr. Boswell?
Aye.
Ms. Macbeth?
Aye.
Mr. Edwards?
Aye.
Mr. Rogers?
Aye.
Our next item is PCR 19-018, which is a request of the Williamsburg Real Estate Foundation, and as an employee of William & Mary, I will abstain from this discussion.
William and Mary Real Estate Foundation is requesting a special use permit to operate a medical office and traditional office space greater than 10,000 square feet in a 23,750 square foot building located at 332 North Henry Street. I noted in your packet the applicant's statement. They note in their application the request specifically addresses the student community's need for additional student health facilities in close proximity to campus and the university's need for additional office space near campus. They also note that despite the opening of the McLeod-Tyler Wellness Center on campus in 2018, there are times when health-related needs of the campus community exceeds the capacity of the existing wellness center and sports medicine facilities. They note that this limits the timeliness of addressing needs for the campus community, and that this facility is within easy walking distance for students and staff, as the applicant notes in their application. I included in your packet the comp plan and current zoning regulations. Since the building is existing and no exterior changes are proposed, no architectural review board approval is necessary. The Site Plan Review Committee reviewed this at their August meeting and recommended approval of the special use permit. In my memo, I also noted that in 2005, a special use permit was issued for the 23,750 square foot Health Evaluation Center at this location, conditioned upon the Lawson House being relocated to 411 Scotland Street. A site plan was approved and permits were issued for the facility, which was completed in 2009. The applicant notes that there are 24 deeded spaces located on the property, which should be sufficient for the proposed use and will serve staff and visitors. Since the property is located in the downtown parking district, no additional spaces are required for the use. The applicant anticipates many of the students will be pedestrian in nature due to the proximity of this location to campus. The proposed use is in harmony with the adopted comp plan and the intent and purpose of the zoning ordinance. It is in harmony with the character of adjacent properties and will not result in the destruction, loss, or damage of any feature determined to be of significant ecological, scenic, or historic importance. The building is sited so that it will not hinder or discourage the appropriate development or redevelopment of adjacent properties. Therefore, staff has reviewed the request and recommends that Planning Commission recommend to City Council approval of the special use permit for the William and Mary Real Estate Foundation to operate a medical office and traditional office space in the 23,750 square foot building at 332 North Henry Street. I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have. Sean Hughes, the Executive Director of William and Mary Real Estate Foundation, is also present if you have any questions of him.
Does anyone have any questions before we open up the floor? With that, I'll open up the public hearing. If you'd like to come up, I have 2 speaker cards, but if you'd like to say some things first. No, please, come on up. It's a representative of the foundation.
Yep, so Sean Hughes at the William and Mary Real Estate Foundation. As Carolyn mentioned, we feel like this reactivates underutilized existing building that already complies with the comp plan and preservation of that scenic route into town. And we feel like in addition to serving a student need, we're reactivating an underutilized building in town and look forward to getting permission to do so. If I can answer any questions, of course, be happy to do it.
Any questions? Great, thank you very much. All right, I do have 2 speaker cards. First is Kevin Kokolis, if you could approach.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Kevin Kokolis, and I'm a student in the MBA program here at William & Mary. Before the William & Mary Real Estate Foundation requested this special permit, students had to be sent off-site, away from campus, for certain medical procedures, and often had to wait in line, even if it was an emergency. I believe the use of this building will be beneficial to house student affairs, health services, and general office space. My aunt coaches the women's soccer team here at William & Mary, and my cousin plays on the team. It would be reassuring to know that if any serious injury befalls anyone on the team, including all athletes on campus, if there were a local center to have issues dealt with as soon as possible. I hope this plan gets approved, as it will benefit many now and in the future. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much. The second speaker card I have is for Luke Walsh, if you could come up. Thank you.
Good afternoon, my name is Luke Walsh. I live at 102 Warrens Pond in Toano, but I'm a MBA student as well. As a recent transplant to the Williamsburg area, and as a student of William & Mary, I think this proposes an outstanding benefit to the school and community. As an active duty member of the United States Coast Guard, I see a base as very similar to a campus, and the bases I've been assigned to have usually had very limited medical services, which resulted in off-site referrals. I saw firsthand the added layer of stress that our members experienced, to the extent that I had shipmates that were willing to forego having something medical looked into just because they didn't want to invest the time into the referral process and go to multiple locations. So having a greater breadth of medical services co-located with the campus greatly improves the students' abilities to receive care, especially for the international students who are already under the added stress of being in a new country and dealing in a different language. So just having something more familiar in their setting to receive their medical attention makes the whole process so much less burdensome. This proposal offers an amazing upside and little to no downside, and as a business student at William & Mary, even though I'm in my first semester, I would say this is a good investment. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who'd like to come forward and speak about this proposal before we open the discussion with the commission? Great. Would anyone like to lead off?
I think it's a wonderful use of that building. I'm glad that it's a really well-equipped medical facility, and I think it's a great idea that William & Mary's coming in there. So I'm all for this.
It's very difficult to even hypothesize a reason to argue against this. I wish they were all this straightforward.
Anyone want to take a shot at that?
I might reiterate something that the plan says, that parking has been a large part of the conversation in the downtown area recently, and the building comes with 24 spaces for staff, and it's also said that many of its users will be pedestrian in nature as they are students. So I think it's a wonderful plan.
I think it'll add to the vibrancy, the people who are working there and such. We'll find them walking down to Prince George Street for lunch and some of the other places. Yep. And so I think it'll be a real asset in a number of ways. Great,
I agree. I'm delighted to have a long-term tenant in there for the first time, really, since the building has been built. So I agree. This strikes me as very straightforward. Would anyone like to put forward a motion?
I move that we recommend to City Council the approval of this proposal.
I second that.
Mr. Granger?
Aye.
Mr. Boswell?
Aye.
Mr. Klee?
Aye.
Mr. Edwards?
Aye.
Mr. Rogers?
Aye.
Thank you.
Great. I'll hand back the virtual gavel.
Great, thank you. So I will continue now. Our next public hearing is PCR 19-019, the Williamsburg James City County Schools for a special use permit to add parking on Ironbound Road. Yes.
Yes, Madam Chair and members of the Commission, Williamsburg James City County Public Schools is requesting a special use permit to expand the paved parking area associated with the central office at 117A and B Ironbound Road. The applicant is proposing 2 phases of construction for the parking. The first phase will include 15 spaces, which are highlighted in red on the overhead, and is proposed to be constructed immediately. The second phase will add an additional 32 spaces as outlined in blue and will be constructed when needed. I noted in my memo the comp plan and zoning for this request. The property is outside of the Architecture Review Board district, therefore no review is required. The Site Plan Review Committee reviewed the request at their August meeting and recommended approval. The applicant is proposing 2 phases, as I mentioned previously. Staff has received a complaint from a citizen that the school waters the adjacent ball field and runs a hose over the multi-use path, which creates an unsafe condition for pedestrians and bicycles using the path. The property is adequately served by essential public services such as streets, drainage facilities, fire protection, and public water and sewer facilities, and meets the comprehensive plan. Therefore, staff recommends that Planning Commission recommend to City Council approval of the special use permit request to add up to 47 parking spaces in 2 phases as shown on the conceptual site plan, conditioned upon no garden hoses or other materials or devices being placed on the multi-use path, which renders the path unsafe by obstructing the flow on the multi-use path. I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have, and I think Mr. Falzone is also here from the school, if you have any questions of him.
And maybe this is my own difficulty on trying to conceptualize this, but the parking and the garden hose are discordant for me. I mean, so is there now going to be some water facility to water the area that needs water? Or, I mean, I don't understand how parking is solving the garden problem.
How staff sees this playing out is they have to relocate part of the multi-use path when they build the second phase anyway. So as part of that construction, I think you put a pipe underneath it, run your hose through the pipe, and then it'll be under the path and not be on top of the path. Or if they have some other means of watering the ball field without putting a hose over top of the
And maybe this was
existing
seen in the
path.
site plan, since I'm not part of that group. And then the second piece of this that I thought the wording was a little odd from things we've seen over the past is that the as needed, these things usually have like a 5-year time horizon that if they don't actually do it, that it's not forever. So that is part of this as well,
So
right?
the intent is, if this is approved, they would go ahead and build the first phase. Once they got site plan approval, site plan would dictate how long the site plan is good for. So that's usually 5 years. And based on our discussions with the schools, this would not be too far down the road before they build the second phase.
Okay, cool. Okay, are there any other questions of Carolyn?
I just had one, I think, which is just what has triggered this. I remember we spent a lot of time worrying about the parking on this site and the route through which cars were going to travel and worrying about the car line and all that kind of stuff. So we did, and not just we, this was considered very carefully when it was initially proposed. What has changed? 47 parking spaces seems like a lot to me. What has changed that has required such a large number of new spaces?
It's my understanding that part of the parking, the current parking, was gravel parking and was used during construction.
I see.
And they found out during construction that they needed the gravel parking also. And Mr. Falzone can correct me if I'm wrong on that. And I think, so they're looking at, they think they need more parking than what was shown on the original site plan and the special use permit. They definitely need the 15 spaces now, and they think they'll need the other ones pretty soon after that. But I think it can probably.
Sure, I'm Jim Falzone. I'm the supervisor for facility. I'm sorry.
Let us open up the public hearing first, but before
Okay.
we get to that, are there any other questions of Carolyn? Okay, then we will open up the public hearing, and you, as the applicant, are first to speak. Yes, please.
Is there any information I can give you? We're good. I mean, I'm not sure if we answered his question about what has changed, but I'm happy to answer that or any other questions that you have.
Oh, you could start with that, and then
Okay.
that'd be great. Thank you.
Okay, sure. Well, as Ms. Murphy pointed out, the red portion of that parking lot right now is currently gravel. It was issued a temporary special use permit in 2016 relative to the demolition of the old James Blair High School Middle School complex. At the very least, we need to address that as being a temporary, but that parking lot also serves our central office area and our IT department over there. It's always muddy. It's always, it's ready. We're ready to pave that. We didn't think at this time that we had the money budgeted to actually expand the parking lot, but we know that there is room to do it. So since we could get a special use permit, or site plan rather, for 5 years, we went ahead and wrote that into this plan for now.
I just wanted to clarify that it's not because of some intended expanded use of the site. This is just a matter of experience has shown that the way
Yes,
that we're
that's
using the site
exactly
right
it.
now is.
So we are currently using that spot as gravel. We just want to pave over it.
Okay, and I don't want it to seem like I don't trust your judgment or anything. Anytime we're increasing the impervious surface somewhere in town, I think we ought to consider that carefully.
Understood.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, then we have opened up the public hearing, so if there's anyone else who'd like to come forward on this subject? Seeing no one, we'll close the public hearing. Is there any other discussion or comments with regard to Carolyn's staff recommendation? Motion?
I move that we recommend approval of PCR 19-019 with the conditions stated.
Second.
Heather?
Mr. Granger,
Aye.
Mr. Boswell,
Aye.
Mr. Klee,
Aye.
Ms. Macbeth,
Aye.
Mr. Edwards,
Aye.
Mr. Rogers.
Aye.
Okay, that concludes our public hearings. We now have time for an open forum, so if anyone would like to come forward and speak on anything that is going to be coming before the commission, now is the time you can do that. Seeing no takers on that. We have no other items of business here today. We do have a Planning Commission work session next week here at 4 o'clock on Chapter 5, the Neighborhoods Chapter. And we already know we have 2 public hearings in October for the White House Inn on Jamestown Road. And so put those on your calendars. And I, as a matter of personal privilege, would like to welcome back Heather as our clerk, our administrative support, and also like to wish longtime Planning Department Administrator Karen Kelly good wishes as she retires. And with that, we are concluded.